You said nearly 95 million people are pre-diabetic.
Out of that 95 million, nearly half don't even know it. What can you do today to prevent that risk later on in life?
Welcome to Fill in the Blanks. I'm very excited about my guest today because my good friend, Dr. John Whyte, is joining me. You've heard me talk about and to Dr. Whyte before. He's the Chief Medical Officer at WebMD. Earlier this year, Dr. Whyte published a book entitled Take Control of Your Diabetes Risk. Now, that's an interesting title, and that's what we're going to have in our conversation today. He's not saying take control of your diabetes. He's actually saying take control of your diabetes risk. That's important because there are things you can do, and we're going to talk about that today. And you may think, well, I tell you what, this isn't particularly relevant to me. Hell, you need to listen to what we have to say for a couple of reasons, because it's relevant to a whole lot more people than think it is. And what we're talking about is relevant to managing overall health as well as diabetes. And there are some real powerful tools in here for managing your overall health. Now, he's going to share some really straightforward information and really equip all of you with strategies to help on a journey to better health, including knowing the causes of the different types of diabetes, learning the role food, exercise, and sleep play, and understanding the relationship between diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. But again, this also is important information for managing your health overall. There is a tremendous mind-body connection that we're going to talk about, and all of this has been accentuated by the pandemic. As we emerge from that, we need to do it and do it right. So he's here today to empower you with strategies for a better health journey. So, Dr. Whyte, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Phil.
It's good to see you again. We always have provocative conversations, which I enjoy.
We do. And we've said we should let more people hear
Yes,
our provocative conversations.
I wish that we had a microphone fly on the wall in some of our conversations, because they get pretty candid sometimes, which has really been thought-provoking to me and influenced some show topics we've done, even since you and I talked in D.C. not long ago.
Absolutely.
It's been really great. Before we get into the specifics of diabetes in particular, the truth of the matter is this has to do with managing overall health. And if you manage your overall health, you're managing your diabetes risk. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. You referenced the pandemic, and what the pandemic has taught us, at the end of the day, all we have is our health. And what can you do to control your own risk factors for disease? We spend so much time, just focus on jobs and family. And then it's not until we actually get a disease, till we get cancer, till we get heart disease, till someone tells us, oh, wait, you've got diabetes. And people are like, whoa, how did that happen? And that's why it's so important to talk about what can you do today to prevent that risk later on in life.
Yeah. The reason I say I want to talk about managing your overall health first, and then we'll funnel it down specifically to your diabetes risk, is because as we're coming out of this pandemic, and I hope we're coming out of this pandemic, I had Dr. Redfield on the other day, former head of the CDC. He's predicting that we're going to see some real spikes as the weather gets cold, different mutations and all, and we can talk about that in a minute. But the truth is, as we're coming out of the pandemic, as a population, we're probably in not so good a shape as we were before, because a lot of people were sedentary.
Sure.
More so during the pandemic than they were before. And you would think maybe it had been different because people had more time to exercise, get out and walk, do things. But I think maybe we're not in as good a shape as we were going in. So we've got some ground to make up, perhaps.
I'm part of that group, Dr. Phil, on Zoom calls all day, doing a lot of interviews. And I'll tell you, I'm wearing a Fitbit because I got it during the pandemic. So I was gaining weight and I put it on. And, the first week I was averaging, I'm not joking, like 2,000, 3,000 steps. And I thought, this has got to be wrong. It says don't wear it on your dominant hand. I was. So I switched it and it was still like 2,500. And I thought, it's probably right. I don't move too far from my office to the living room to upstairs. But I had to make that conscious effort to rethink and really refocus on what I'm doing. Most diseases, by and large, are caused by lifestyle, which is your point, that the factors that we're going to talk about here apply to other diseases. There are some nuances and some exceptions, but genetics doesn't cause most conditions that we get. It's pretty small. Most is caused by our daily choices over time.
Over time.
Absolutely.
Which is right. So if somebody has a bad day eating things that aren't good for them, that's not going to be outcome determinative for their health. If they smoke one cigarette, which I've never done and
I've never
planned to,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But making a bad choice on food or drink or whatever on one day or splurging on a vacation, it's not going to be outcome determinative for their life. We're talking about patterns across time because that sets a lot of things in your body and it takes a long time. Now, I grew up with three sisters and they used to say they eat one cheeseburger, it goes straight to their hips and takes 6 months to get rid of. And I don't think it's that bad, but
I have two sisters, by the way. That's probably why we get along.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah. We're foxhole buddies. But the truth is, we picked up some patterns during the pandemic of being more sedentary, maybe eating differently, not dealing with stress as well, maybe not being as active in catharsis for our emotions and all. And so I think we've come out compromised mentally, emotionally, physically. So I think we need to make a conscious effort at this point, not just to say, okay, I'll get back to my normal self now and everything will be back to normal. I think we need to make a conscious effort to reset everything and not just kind of let it drift back up to where it was, but instead make a conscious effort. Intentional exercise, intentional diet choices, intentional behaviors that will get us back more quickly and more directly to where we need to be. And if people will do that, I think they can close the gap a lot quicker.
No doubt about it. We're going to see the consequences of the last 2 to 3 years, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, if we don't make those changes. And we also have to put in many people didn't go to the doctor during that time. As you and I have talked about, mental health is going to have a huge impact in terms of our physical health as well. So if we don't do what you just talked about, be intentional in terms of our lifestyle and hold ourselves accountable too. We need to do a little bit of that. Sometimes we, that bad day turns into a bad week, a bad month, a bad year. And then, you're waiting until much later in life till you say, oh, I'll start exercising when I retire. I've actually heard that from people. Or I'll get enough sleep when I die. People often say that, flippantly. That's not going to help you. So if we're not intentional now, we're going to have many, many more problems in society 5, 10, 20 years from now.
Well, the truth is we picked up some new habits during the pandemic. Like you said, you don't walk as far from your living room to your office. Before you were walking around, going to meetings, going on the hill, going here, going different places. For a long time, you didn't do that. We picked up new habits. Zoom wasn't even in my vocabulary. And then all of a sudden, I started hearing people say Zoom, Zoom, Zoom. I thought, what are we really racing around? What are you talking about? And then I find out, no, there are these meetings that everybody's having. So,
and they're all videos.
Yes.
We never did video conferencing.
No, nobody did that before. Well, I guess some people did, but I didn't. Next thing you know, you've got 8 hours of Zoom meetings throughout a day and you're in a chair. So we picked up some habits. And I just want to say to people, you don't break habits. You replace one set of behaviors with a new set of incompatible behaviors. I say incompatible because it's so much easier to take on new behaviors if they're incompatible with the ones you're trying to replace. You can't sit and run at the same time. So you need to adopt a new set of behaviors that are incompatible with what you're wanting to get rid of. But you don't break habits if you simply stop doing a set of behaviors and don't put something else in its place. You will default back to that behavior.
Right. Same thing I talk about to patients and in the book. And when we talk about food, it's as important what you include as well as what you exclude. And that goes to your point in terms of replacing. And that's how you have to think about it.
People don't realize that small changes accumulate to big results across time. You talk about in Take Control of Your Diabetes Risk that it's patterns that matter. And if people can make even small changes to their eating habits, sleeping habits, exercise habits, if people lose a half a pound a week, think about it. People lose a half a pound a week, and there are 52 weeks in the year. That's 26 pounds. That's huge.
It is, and I say it all the time to patients, and you compound that with, as we get older, most people gain weight because your basal metabolic rate, kind of that internal furnace, slows down. So you're automatically going to gain weight because you have less output just by your activities of daily living. But Dr. Phil, people are like, but I need to lose weight, for an upcoming wedding or for an activity. And then they only do it for that. And then often they regain the weight. Nobody wants to think about that strategy that I tell people, you know what? I care less about where you are 2 weeks from now, as opposed to where you are next year, where you are 5 years from now, where all of your friends are going to be 20 pounds heavier and you're going to be 10 pounds less. That's success.
If we can just decide, okay, we don't need to panic here, and we don't need to jump tall buildings in a single bound.
Absolutely right.
We just need to recognize, okay, we're coming out of the pandemic, and because we've been more sedentary, because we've gained some weight, because we're 2 years older, there's never a better time to manage our diabetes risk, to manage our overall health than right now.
Right.
And like I said, we don't need to panic. We just need to say, okay, let me choose 4 or 5 things that I'm going to fold in to my lifestyle pattern for the rest of this year, recognizing that the rest of this year is going to go by whether you're doing something about it or not. September's going to pass, October, November, and December, whether you're doing something about it or not. So you might as well be doing something about it. And when we're talking about diabetes, you said some things in Take Control of Your Diabetes Risk that just jumped off the page at me. You said that nearly 95 million people are pre-diabetic, and that 34 million people have diabetes. That's 1 in 10. So if you take the 95 and the 34, you're talking about 130 million people.
Almost half of Americans have it. You know what's even more startling, Dr. Phil? Out of that 34 million that have type 2 diabetes, 20% don't even know it. Out of that 95 million, 96 million people that have prediabetes, nearly half don't even know it.
Fish a couple of times a week. That's valuable in that it replaces something else that's not going to be as calorie efficient, but it also has some other values as well.
And we're not talking surf and turf, right? So you add the fish. We're not talking, I had to tell patient, we're not talking, and he was serious, fish sticks. I'm like, we're not talking fish sticks.
Yeah.
We're talking, regular fish. And, Dr. Phil, this kind of is my pet peeve. 20% of Americans eat fish once a week, 20%. 80% don't eat fish at all.
Really?
Really. They've done study after study. Most people don't eat fish. And, too bad we can't poll our listeners to say how many have eaten fish this week. It's going to be a very small number. And that's used to, people don't feel comfortable sometimes cooking fish, although there's so many choices nowadays. But what's great about it, as you pointed out, when you're replacing it with something else, it's fewer calories. So you're automatically going to lose weight. Most fish is 250 to 300 calories, based on its size. And then it has these powerful antioxidants. It has vitamins, it has minerals, magnesium, potassium, all the things that people want from a supplement pill, right? From that powder or pill or capsule. It's in whole food. So that's always going to be a better choice. And people are fearful of cooking fish. And there's so many great recipes out there. That's what I really encourage people to consider. It'll make a big change.
Is there a fish to stay away from?
I get that a lot. And sometimes I feel like people ask that, as another excuse, like, oh, I can't eat fish. There's too much mercury. And there's some tuna and deep dwelling fish that may have a higher mercury content. But in general, it's as you referenced early on, it's about managing different types of risks. Having fish twice a week, you don't need to be concerned about too much mercury. You don't need to be concerned about other issues. That's going to be the healthier choice. And sometimes, Dr. Phil, it's about making the healthier choice to start off with. Not always the best choice, but a better choice. And fish is a better choice than red meat, processed meat.
I'll suggest a fourth one that's kind of off the wall, but I think it is really helpful for people to clean up their environment. If you go into people's kitchen and you take out all the contraband, you go in there and get rid of all of the cookies, the easily ingestible, high sugar foods that people tend to snack on late at night or whatever, it's not enough to just clean up the environment. You have to put things in there that are positive alternatives, because people get hungry. And when you get hungry, you're going to want something to eat. But if you cut some vegetables up in there that you keep in water, celery, carrots, whatever, just something that if you would kill to get something to eat and you have some healthy alternatives in there, that will become the behaviors that replace the other habit. So if you go in and clean up your environment and replace it with positive alternatives, look, you can get in the car and drive to the convenience store and get a box of cookies or chips or whatever, but you're much less likely to do that than you are to just walk in your kitchen and graze.
Because we're lazy some days.
Yeah.
We don't want to try. I'll go one step further, Dr. Phil, and I'll remind people, stop buying them, right? And we're guilty of that at home sometimes too. And people will say, well, I bought it for my kids. I bought it for my spouse.
They don't need it either.
That's right. It's a family affair. And that's sometimes why people fail, because one partner is trying to be healthy and the other one isn't. And that can create tensions and challenges too. And it's really a family affair. And you'd be doing better to not just clean out that environment, but then be like, oh, hey, you don't need to go buy it and have it there, because if it's there, you're going to eat it.
I think cleaning that up and not replenishing it, that would be a great environmental control. You're now programming your environment to support your goal. I think that's really important. If we get people mindful of diabetes, what are they likely to notice that would be a tip off to them that, hey, this really is something I might need to check on? What are the symptoms they're going to notice first?
Some of the early warning signs are that you're starting to urinate a lot more often than you think. And the average for most people is about 7 times a day, just in case they're wondering. Because what's happening is your high sugar load that's staying in your bloodstream is pulling out water from your cells. So you're peeing a lot. And then in conjunction with that, you become thirsty a lot. I saw a patient about a month and a half ago that she came in, her blood sugar was in the 400s, and she said to me, she's so thirsty, she almost, you can't make this up, wanted to drink out of the toilet bowl. She's just so thirsty. That's because she's losing so much water. She's becoming dehydrated because of the high sugar load. So when people tell me that they're thirsty a lot, I get a little bit concerned. I'll tell you, a bad sign that it's progressed significantly is what we call the neuropathies, the tingling, the numbness. Once you experience that, usually you're diagnosed with diabetes. And that's hard to reverse. Our medications aren't great, but that thirsty feeling that you're having more often, that urinating, the excess weight gain. Because what's happening is, think about it, you're using insulin to bring glucose into your cells, which is your energy. In type 2, when you have that resistance, you're not getting that glucose into your cells, that energy. So what do? You actually eat more because you're trying to get energy because your insulin is still working somewhat. So you start to gain a lot of weight. And some of that can be directly due to diabetes as well as causing diabetes. So those are some of the early warning signs.
No, unless we prioritize them, they don't. I know that a lot of people, when they do get in the throes of type 2 diabetes, there are energy deficits and they start having emotional reactions to it. There's also a fair amount of judgment. I think when people get a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, they do feel that people start judging them, thinking they're lazy, that they're kind of slugs, that they don't take care of themselves, et cetera, et cetera. There is a certain amount of mental emotional baggage that comes with it as well. I think it's important for people to be intentional about that as well and recognize, look, this is a disease and I am taking affirmative steps to manage this. This is something that if I'm acknowledging it and I'm doing the things that I need to minimize this disease and its impact in my life, then I can take pride in being an active manager and doing the things that I need to do. Because there's a stigma tied to type 2 diabetes that's not tied to certain other diseases.
That's right. And there's still a lot of misunderstanding about it. And I talk about in the book, this concept of diabetes distress that you're referencing. And there's also depression, which goes both ways. If you're depressed, you often may engage in unhealthy behaviors. You may not take medication. You don't go see the doctor. And if you develop diabetes, that can change your life in many ways and cause a distress. I really see a pattern that's similar to heart disease. So when patients have a heart attack, that kind of first time frame early on is like, okay, they're going to clean out that pantry, as you just talked about. They're going to, start to do a cardiac rehab and really make those lifestyle changes. But then it's 6 months later, it's a year later when they get depressed about it, right? Thinking, I'm not seeing as many changes anymore because it's incremental over time, or they're tired about it, or they haven't thought through enough about this intentional changes. And then they're starting to struggle with it. And then it's the people around them who may not understand it and are confused and treat them differently, Dr. Phil. And that's what bothers them as well.
Well, the adrenaline fades. When you first get into it, you go, okay, I'm pumped up, I'm going to do this. But then the adrenaline fades and then you're just left with the problem and the management. It is a slow turn. But that's why I say I really want people to recognize, particularly in health management in general, disease management in particular, diabetes management specifically, small changes add up to significant results across time.
It's that pattern. A patient the other day who wasn't really making the changes that they had before, came in, their blood sugar is now back in, an abnormal range. And I was like, well, what's going on? And she said to me, you know how it is, Dr. Whyte, life gets in the way. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Like, I knew what she meant. And my point to her was, this is your priority, right? It's not that you have to change everything all at once, but what is more important than your own health? But that's the mindset, Dr. Phil, that sometimes we have to help people think through and empower them, right? That they can make these changes and they're going to feel good about it. It's not, something I'm taking away. We're actually giving them things.
But it's not acute. So if it was an earache, they'd be saying, okay, I got to do something about this. It was an ankle they couldn't walk on.
Yeah.
But this is something that's insidious. It's not burning bright every single day. And so it's awful easy for days to turn into weeks and weeks turn into months and then months turn into a more serious problem that they could have managed
That's
if
right.
they had dealt with it at the time.
Or they'll say, I'll just take a pill or I'll take more insulin and then I can have that cake. It's like, okay, how did we get to this point?
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to empowering people with good information, helping them along the process. And let's be fair, doctors aren't always good about talking about prevention, managing symptoms, and we tend to focus on that broken ankle, that heart attack, and less so about how we got to managing chronic disease.
So people know, and maybe they have some blood work, their last blood work, maybe their doctor hasn't discussed it with them. What is the normal range for a 40 to 50 something year old male, female? What's the normal range for their glucose?
And there can be different tests,
Sure.
and you can find them online. A lot of times we order something called a hemoglobin A1c. Sometimes people call it glycosylated hemoglobin. It's looking at your blood sugar really for about the past 3 months, because that's the length of the red blood cell, and they're looking at how well your blood cell is glycosylated. So normally we want to see a normal, A1c like 5.7%. It's a percentage. And we give the definition of diabetes typically around 6.5%. And in between would be considered pre-diabetes. And then a lot of times we can do a fasting blood sugar. We could do it on both of us, right now. And really we want to see it below 100 to be normal. Above 126 is considered, the diabetes range, and anything in between is considered pre-diabetes. And these numbers have changed a little over time, just to be fair, because we're trying to catch it earlier on. There's something also called an oral glucose tolerance test. I've only done it a few times in practice. You have to give a sugar load, and then, you measure and then look at it. But glycosylated hemoglobin and then the fasting plasma glucose is the most standard test. And you could go in today and get those tests done, and you can know by the end of the day whether you have diabetes. Certainly if it's abnormal, we're going to repeat it, because sometimes people aren't truly fasting when we say they're fasting if they're measuring that. And that's important to point out. What's frustrating, Dr. Phil, is I've had a lot of people, they don't come back. It's to your point. They don't want to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Well, I think we've talked about this in a way that makes it understandable and manageable. The book is Take Control of Your Diabetes Risk. It's by John Whyte, MD. You can find lots of answers in this book. And it's interesting, it's not only telling you what the disease is, it's telling you what to do to manage your risk. And we've tried to give you some common sense thinking about it today. Hopefully it's motivated you about it. And let me tell you, everything that we've talked about today concerning taking control of your diabetes risk fits for managing your overall health. If you have cancer, for example, you would avoid known carcinogens, obviously. If it was heart disease, there would be specific things for your heart. But managing your health, managing the disease process, everything we've talked about today generalizes to managing disease process in general, right?
Absolutely.
Managing stress, getting good sleep, taking time to get intentional exercise, controlling your diet, all of those things are consistent to managing all of the chronic diseases.
Because most chronic disease is caused by lifestyle.
Exactly.
And that's, if you can control your lifestyle, you can control your risk in most conditions.
Yeah. I know it's heard so much that it's probably lost its meaning. It's become so cliche, but early detection and early intervention is still powerful, powerful, powerful in determining the outcome of your disease process. So don't be in denial. If you don't know, find out. The sooner you know, the more options you have of controlling it and the less damage it's likely to do to you. It's much easier to avoid the damage than it is to reverse it once it's happened. So hopefully we can do it. Well, I hope you will come back and continue to talk about this, talk about cancer, talk about heart disease, talk about all of these things, because I think it is a safe place for people to get really solid, evidence-based information about this. And of course, WebMD is the go-to place for all of this. So,
and thanks for having these conversations. It's information people need.
Well, you and I talk about other things that are happening in society and stress, and I appreciate you sharing your platform and talking about mental health, mental illness, mental challenges that we're facing right now in this country and in this society. You've been great about talking about some of those things. We just had an op-ed piece in USA Today talking about this work from home situation. It's had a great response and lots of pickup. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on USA Today website. Just query the two of us on working from home, and it'll be in there. I know we'll keep talking about these issues. So y'all have been great partners on getting that information out as well.
Well, thank you.
So I look forward to talking some more in the future. Dr. Whyte, thank you so much.
Always great to be with you, Dr. Phil.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.